Waiting for the last minute people to arrive, but it might be a good time to push on. We're running just a few minutes over time. So first of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Ruth Lee Martin. I'm the Senior Manager at the Fulbright Commission. And today, the Fulbright presentations that we're doing are part of our Fulbright Roadshow. So we go to every capital city in every state and territory. That includes Darwin and Hobart and Adelaide, Perth. So we'll be all around Australia over the next few weeks. And just bringing people information about our scholarships, because as you probably know, the Fulbright scholarships range from both postgraduate, postdoc, senior, professional, up to distinguished chair, which is our most prestigious scholarship. So today we're going to focus specifically on the postdocs. And so I'll go through the information for you, and then we're going to have a couple of people talk to you. We've got Professor John Leslie over here from Kansas State University, and we've got our distinguished chair, Professor Thad Kouser. He's currently stationed at Flinders University in Adelaide. So I'll ask them just to talk briefly to you, and then I'm really happy to take any questions from you that you may have. Okay. So first of all, I think a really important thing to think about if you're at all interested in putting in an application is to find out what the mission and vision of the scholarship body is about, because this will give you some really key insights, I think, into forming your application. So the mission of Fulbright is to promote educational and cultural exchange between Australia and the United States. So the idea is to enhance mutual understanding and strengthen relationships between the two countries. That's a really important part of what we do and is actually at the very centre of all of our activities. Our vision is to be the leading scholarship body between Australia and the US. And I think I can say without bragging unduly that we're certainly recognised for our quality and our values. And the wonderful thing about Fulbright, which I'll talk to you more about later, is the opportunities that it realises for you and the doors that it opens. So we have a very strong network of national, regional and global collaborations. So the history of Fulbright, established of course by the US Senator J. William Fulbright, and that was back in 1946. It's the largest education scholarship program in the world because it actually exists between the USA and 160 different countries around the world. I think that's quite remarkable. And to date, we have exchanged over 300,000 Fulbright scholars. And that too, I think, is quite remarkable. So the Australian Commission itself was established in 1949, and it was established through a binational treaty between the Australian and the US governments. It was funded initially by the sale of war armaments. So I think that towards the end of World War II, everybody was really thinking, oh my goodness, you know, it's been a kind of catastrophic situation we find ourselves in. And visionaries like Senator Fulbright wondered how they could do something to change the world and make it a better place. And he felt strongly that this could be achieved through educational and cultural exchange. And I love those ideals. It lies at the heart of Fulbright and is about everything that we do. The Australian Prime Minister and the US Ambassador are the honorary co-chairs of the Fulbright Commission. And we do have a board of 10 members, and 5 of those are chosen from the US and 5 from Australia. As far as Australia goes, we've now exchanged over 2,700 Australian scholars, and 2,000 American scholars have come to Australia to partake of the Fulbright program, including Thad here. So as far as the postdoc scholarships go, we have a generous monthly stipend that we pay our scholars. We also include a travel allowance for a return flight to the US and back, a return flight to the US. We have an establishment allowance to help you get started when you arrive. And if you have a dependent, there's some conditions with a dependent allowance. It's an allowance for one dependent only, and only where applicable. There are conditions, as I said. The dependent must accompany the scholar for 80% of the time. We also include ASPE insurance that's given by the US government up to $100,000, but we do ask that our scholars take out their own insurance as well, because medical cover is very expensive anywhere. It doesn't matter where in the world you go. In Australia and the US, it's particularly expensive, and so we also encourage some private insurance as well. The total package is valued for the postdoc scholarship at up to 45,000 Australian dollars. Okay, so I think this is where Fulbright really shines. I might be biased amongst all the scholarship bodies, but we have the most amazing network that's very well established of alumni and international collaborations and connections. And these really do open doors for our scholars. I hear it all the time. It's something that you hear frequently, but it's still very sincere, that people will say, oh my goodness, I didn't realise when I took up a Fulbright that it would open all these doors for me. You say the Fulbright name and people really pay attention, especially in the US where it's so very well known and respected. Every year in February or March, usually towards the end of February, we hold an orientation program, and we also have a spectacular presentation dinner where our scholars are all presented. And this year that was in Perth, and we had 46 scholars all up. We brought the US scholars together with the Australian scholars. We had a wonderful time. You can ask Thad what he thought of it. He was there, he was presented, and we had the great honour of having the US ambassador present the certificates. So that was a great honour for us this year. And we have a 3-day orientation program. You kind of go into lockdown for 3 days. You get to start your networks with the other scholars, and we give you all the information you need to know about getting your visa and so forth. So you're very well supported. I guess that's the thing I'm trying to get across here. You get a lot of support from the Fulbright Commission. You also get a lot of support from other organisations in the US. We have the CIEs, which is the Council for International Exchange of Scholars. And you'll have somebody assigned to you, and they look after you and help you with any questions. If there's any emergencies, there's somebody you can contact. And so you go there feeling like you're part of a community rather than just being given money and thrown out into the dark. That doesn't happen with Fulbright. We support you the whole way. So here, and sitting underneath our wonderful slide here of our postdoc scholar, we're very proud of Will Feeny. Shall we say, and he's going to further research on the ecology and evolution of competitive interactions between species and how these interactions influence biological diversity. And I'm sure that at the end of the session, if you'd like to talk to Will about his project, he'll be very happy to talk to you. And Will too was presented in Perth with his certificate at the presentation dinner this February. So it's lovely to have you here today, Will. We also have, as well as having the postdoc scholarship, there are other opportunities as well, which I'll go through with you today. We have a Fulbright Indigenous Scholarship. Now, if you're an Indigenous person, you can apply for this scholarship, and it goes across 4 categories: postgrad, postdoc, professional and senior scholar. So that's another opportunity as well for people. It's for an Indigenous scholar to undertake research in the United States, of course, and it's available across any academic field. So you can see there that it was originally established in cooperation with the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island Commission, and it's valued at up to $45,000 Australian. Now here is another opportunity. So what happens is that when you apply for Fulbright, you can apply for a postdoc in the general category. You can also ask to be considered in the Queensland State Scholarship category. So if you like it, it gives you 2 bites of the cherry. So it's this one. This scholarship is sponsored by the Queensland Government, and all Queensland universities have contributed to this. It was established in 2007, and it goes across both postgrad and postdoc. So only one is given out, but we'll choose, we might have, say, 2 or 3 people that are put forward towards the end, and they could go, so that one could go either across. If there's a fabulous person in postgrad, it might go to a postgrad, but if there's a fabulous person in postdoc, it'll go to the postdoc. So it just does give you that other opportunity to have a go at getting a Fulbright scholarship. Again, it goes across all academic disciplines, which is really wonderful, I think, about Fulbright, is that it really welcomes diversity. We have musicians, we have composers, we have scientists, we have everything in between. So we go from the hard sciences down to the creative arts, and we're equally proud of all of our scholars. And I actually come from the creative arts myself. I'm a musicologist / composer, which sounds a bit scary. But I'm very pleased to say that Fulbright sees no boundaries in the discipline. So it doesn't matter what academic discipline you're from, you are very welcome with Fulbright. Now, the only stipulation to this scholarship is that you must both reside and work in Queensland. Because the scholarship's been funded by the Queensland Government and the Queensland universities, we want the benefits to come back to Queensland. So we're looking for a Queenslander, basically, to take up this scholarship, to go and do their project of research over in the US, and then come back and give back to the community in Queensland. And there you have, very proud to say, Tracy Steinrucken, our Queensland State Postgraduate Scholar this year. And she's a plant pathologist, and she'll be looking at dieback in invasive plant populations. And probably we might need to talk to Professor Leslie a bit more about that, because I've got a bit lost with invasive plant populations, but perhaps that's dieback in introduced species, I would take that to be. So anyway, he can fill us in later. So there's Tracy. We also have a Fulbright Postdoctoral Scholarship in Cultural Competence. Now, this is a fairly new scholarship. I think it's a very innovative scholarship because it has some things tacked onto the end of it that you won't see in other scholarships. But first, it's for a 10-month program, which all our postdocs are for. So you can either go for 3 months, short period, or you might say to us, look, I really need that 10 months to make the most out of my program, and we can organise that. This one comes with a 2-month residency at the end of the scholarship. So you go off to the US, you might do your 10 months, and then come back and spend 2 months at Sydney University, and you get the wonderful privilege of having time to write up I mean, how often does that happen in life where you can just sit and do your research with no interruptions and somebody's going to pay you to do it very comfortably with a generous stipend? So I think it's a wonderful thing that's just been tacked on to the end of this scholarship so that you can write up all your findings and, produce them maybe as an article or something like that. It's open to all Australians with an interest in the field of cultural competence. And it can go across any discipline. It could go across health, might be music, might be ethnomusicology or something like that. So it's a wonderful scholarship. It's a very generous scholarship package, and it's sponsored by the National Centre for Cultural Competence at the University of Queensland. And look at that package, valued up to $59,000 Australian. We also have a Fulbright Senior Specialist Program, and this is an institutional grant. It's to bring out a leading US academic for 2 to 6 weeks to share expertise, maybe take seminars, do some workshops, masterclasses, that kind of thing. And the applicant for that is an Australian university. So if you're at a university and you're thinking, gee, it would be fantastic to get this professor out from the US, go and talk to your university and tell them about this program and see if they can't apply to get this person brought out. Great opportunity. All right, so the selection process itself, getting into the nitty-gritty now. The applications open 1st of May and close on the 1st of August. Applications are all submitted online. We don't accept anything now that's sent through the post. It all goes online. You should all be familiar with this kind of application by now, I think. It's a very rigorous process for the postdocs, and they go to the state committees where they're assessed. So when we get the applications, the first thing we do is look for eligibility. We do a technical review. Then all the eligible applications are sent to the various selection committees. We have about 16 selection committees around Australia, and they're all peopled with very distinguished academics, and might be government, people high up in government, industry and so forth. So they're a group of very informed people that don't have specific knowledge maybe to your area. There might be, with the panels are generally quite diverse. There's about 6 people on them, and we do try and have, say, a scientist on there and maybe somebody from humanities and so forth. So they'll have a general understanding of your area. But if your area is very technical, you might need to consider that it needs to be understood by very educated people that aren't in your field. So the applications go out and they're all scored. You get a score. They're all blind reviewed. Not blind reviewed, they're all reviewed separately. The others don't know what the marks are. The other people on the selection committee, the marks come in, they're collated, and then we go for a shortlist. Now, all shortlisted applicants are interviewed. We're very proud of the fact that every single one of our scholars, American and Australian, are all interviewed. So everybody who's selected has gone through that process. So I think a good question there is why you and your proposal? Why your proposal? Because you're in a field with a lot of good applicants, so you need to be able to tell us what is so special about your area and why it needs to be funded. I think that's really important. So you need to be able to be very clear about the importance. Maybe there's a gap in the knowledge that you're trying to fill. The feasibility of the project is very important because you've got academics on the panel that will know at a glance if this thing's feasible. If you've written up something that looks like it's going to take 3 years and you're asking for 3 months, that's just not going to fly. So you can be knocked out for a whole lot of reasons, but the thing is to make sure that your project is doable in the time frame. And also really we're looking for people who've got a really clear idea of what they want to do, why they want to do it, why it's important, its feasibility, as I said, and also that it looks really organised. Looks like it's already could fly if it was funded. So I think those things are really important to keep in mind. If you're interviewed, yes, engage the committee. This is your chance, if you get to interview, I think, to really sell yourself. Be passionate about your project. And I think the passion for your project is what brings people through time and time again, because I've sat through this year, I think 125 interviews, and so I'm actually becoming, I think, an interview expert. And you can see people's passion come through. And it doesn't matter, you know, if you're an introvert or an extrovert. To be a Fulbrighter, you don't need to be the world's best extrovert. You just need to be passionate about what you're doing, and you need to be able to sell its importance to a panel of people. The final outcomes are known. There's so many processes to go through that people don't realise. There's a lot of paperwork, a lot of hoops are being jumped. People aren't aware of that, but there's a lot going on in the background, including approval from America. We have to get approval from the Fulbright Foreign Scholarship Board, and then as soon as they approve our selections, we have the most amazing job ever, and I'm so lucky to be in my job. We get to ring every single person who gets a Fulbright and tell them that they have got a Fulbright. And first of all, Tange will usually say, what are you doing at the moment? And often people might be saying, oh, you know, I'm just having a cup of tea, or I'm driving the car, and in which case she'll tell them to pull over. We don't want any Fulbright accidents. And or somebody might be cleaning the bathroom. That happened last. We just said, sit down, we've got some good news for you. So it's a wonderful thing to do. So I think for the applications where people follow all the things I'm telling you, you know, it does lead to success. And the other thing I'd probably say when we're talking about success is don't be put off by failure. Failure in that you didn't get a Fulbright 1 year, it can be as simple as your project wasn't feasible within the time frame, or it might be that there were 10 people in your field that came through. We're always looking for diversity, so we wouldn't choose, say, 8 lawyers or something to go to the US. We'll try and spread that around a little bit. So I think the greatest lesson I've learnt in life is to try again. I was a recipient of a Creative Arts Fellowship about 5 years ago, and I got it on my 3rd go. Right, I'd almost despaired that I'd ever get it, and I thought, well, blow this, I'm going to really try hard. And I spent a lot of time on the application. I rewrote it and so forth, and I was so pleased to get that. So you can do that with Fulbright. You can apply again. We don't hold it against people if they've applied once, and we don't keep records. But I would encourage you, if you don't get through the first time, to try again, because eventually, if you keep trying with grants, you will get success. Okay, selection criteria. Yes, we're looking for academic and professional excellence. The relevance of the proposed program. I've already spoken a little bit about that. So let me talk now about the potential outcomes, because this is also really an important part of your application. We want to know what you're going to do with the outcomes of your study. How's it going to benefit not only you, but also maybe your field in Queensland. If you've got the Queensland State Scholarship, what are you going to give back to Queensland when you come back to Australia? Think kind of laterally, I think, and creatively in terms of potential outcomes. It might be not just an article, a journal article, which is fantastic, but it might be some seminars that you want to give. You've organised with your university to do some seminars or a workshop with some other people and share that expertise. Fulbright is really about giving back as much, if not more, as taking. So you need to keep that in mind. I've given you a little bit of Fulbright gold there for your application. Fulbright is about giving back as much as taking. Ambassadorial skills. Yes, we are looking for people with ambassadorial skills, But the greatest introverts in the world can have the most amazing ambassadorial skills. So don't think because you're a bit, introverted or you're not outgoing that will stand against you. It won't. Just let your passion for your subject see you through, and it'll stand you in good stead. I think another thing that we like in our Fulbright scholars is adaptability. So people that aren't so rigid that they can't, flex and bend with the things that life throws at them. It's a great thing to always keep that adaptability, and it's not something particularly, I think, that is confined to the young. I think people think older people become very rigid, but I don't find that always to be the case. And I think that if you keep something in life, keep that sense of adaptability. It'll stand you in good stead, whether it's for Fulbright or not. Nationality, you need to be an Australian citizen. It is funded by the Australian government, so we want people who are going to represent Australia. If you have dual citizenship between the US and Australia, you are ineligible. You can be a dual citizen, say, between the UK and Australia, no problem at all, any other country, but not between the US and Australia, because it's for people to go and have that experience in the US, and if they're already doing it and they've already got those connections, then we'd probably give the Fulbright to somebody who needs a bit of a help to make those connections. Wonderful thing about Fulbright, very proud of this, no age limit. Isn't that fantastic? Doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are even. It's open to you and open to any field or host institution. So don't feel confined that, you need to go to, places like Harvard or Columbia. Be more adventurous in your outreach, in looking around, because some of the universities that might be a little bit off the beaten track in the US might say, oh my goodness, we're so pleased to be getting a Fulbright. We'll give you this, we'll give you that, you can do this. Can you take a seminar? Can you take these students? And so forth. So you get a lot of interaction, and it's a very dynamic connection. And that would be considered of very high value, maybe more so than if you just got a desk and a chair somewhere else. So keep that in mind too. We also liked people to have been resident in Australia for 2 years before applying. So if somebody is an Australian citizen and they've gone to, say, maybe Europe or something for a long time, we do prefer it if they're in Australia before applying. And again, it's just because we like to have that connection with Australia very strong. You'll have loads of questions, I'm sure, if you begin the application process, and we are very, very happy to take your calls. Email first is always good rather than a call, because then we can, we're very busy, we can fit it into our schedules a bit more, but we will take your calls. All we ask is that you ask informed questions. So we got an inquiry the other day about, oh, I'm interested in a Fulbright. Can you tell me what a Fulbright is? Well, I'd prefer the person went to the website first and found out what a Fulbright was, and then if they can ask me a specific question, I'll be very happy to take it. There's also on the website, brand new website, by the way, so if there's any little 404 messages come up, please, we're checking it all the time. It's just been launched in the last day. But there's some FAQs there, and they're fantastic. They'll take you through a lot of the commonly asked questions, of course, that we get. So you can go there first, and then if we don't answer your question, of course, get in touch with us. Okay, planning. I think I've touched on a lot of that. I think understanding what Fulbright is super important to your application. You've got to understand what was Senator Fulbright on about? What was his ideas? How does his ideas, merge with mine or meld with mine? Because Fulbright is a little bit different, I think, from other scholarship bodies in that we don't just give you the money and you run. We give you the money and a whole support network, but we also expect some things in return, and that is to be a wonderful ambassador for Fulbright, to encourage others to achieve their best and to maybe apply for a scholarship as well. So we do have expectations of our scholars. Identify, as I said, and negotiate your best host institution. It may not be quite where you expect it to be, but let that kind of journey be a bit of an adventure rather than just kind of very focused on the one place. We do have a long lead-in time, so you can't take up the scholarship for this round until July 2016, and you need to take it up before June 2017. And in that time period, you've got lots of flexibility. You might want to go in August of 2016, or you might say, Ruth, look, I think it's better for me if I go in February 2017. So there's all those things to consider. Get someone outside your field to proofread. I think this is a great idea because remember the panel I was telling you about, that they're very educated people, but they may not be in your particular area. And I've been an academic for many, many years at the ANU, and I know there's a lot of jargon. So jargon doesn't often travel across different disciplines, or even when it does, sometimes it changes its meaning. So please make sure that your applications are intelligible to educated people that aren't in your field. Make sure that you're using the correct form. I think it sounds pretty self-evident, but it's not. When you go on the new website, we've spent a lot of time making sure that the links are very, very clear. There was a little bit of confusion last year, I think, but it's very clear now. Just make sure that you're don't put in a postgraduate application. Don't use a postgraduate application form. It must be a postdoc. And you're looking for the CIEs because they're the people that will be looking after you. If in doubt, just send us an email. Okay, so one thing I'd like to touch on here that's really important is the personal statement. And this is where a lot of people have a lot of trouble. You've got to write a whole page on yourself. And this is where, though, you can let your ambassadorial qualities shine through. If it was me, I'd be writing stuff up about things that maybe I'd been doing with the local club. This might be a swimming club, or shows some kind of different aspect of your personality. We know that your academic record, what that's like. We can read it from the transcripts that you'll be submitting. But we want to know about you, the person. We want you to tell us your story and the kinds of things that you've been engaged in, the kind of person you are. At postdoc level, we need an institutional letter of support, and you can set about with your research, and I think your supervisors and things like that or colleagues are really good to get some ideas off, and you probably know who's great in your field in the US anyway. And you can write off to them and say, gee, I'm applying for a Fulbright. I would love it if I could come and spend some time at your institution. Could you write me a host letter? All the documents that you load up onto the Embark site have to be official. They have to be certified documents. And silly thing really, but you'll be surprised people forget to do this. Click Submit. Okay, so the Fulbright Scholarship does come with some terms and conditions. Remember, we are at heart an educational and cultural exchange program with emphasis on exchange, okay? Now, that means that you're going to go to the US, you're going to pick up lots of amazing contacts, new knowledge. You're going to come back, and what are you going to do? You're going to share with the Australian populace. You're going to come back, and it might be, in your university in Australia, you're going to share your knowledge. And to do that, you need to come back here for 2 years. So it's actually a condition of the J1 visa. So that there is that residency requirement at the end of it. You need to make that very clear from the very beginning, that when you go on a Fulbright, you have to agree that you will come back for 2 years to Australia and share that knowledge, work here in Australia, and then you can go wherever you like. It doesn't mean to say that you cannot go to the US to keep your contacts and collaborations going, to do conferences, to do masterclasses and workshops, seminars, all that sort of thing. We do encourage that, but remember that you do need to have that 2-year residency requirement. As a Fulbright scholar, you'll get an amazing opportunity to share your successes in all sorts of way with the media. And we do give you support with that as well. We write up your profiles and with help from you, of course, put your photograph up on the website, let different media contacts know. We have a person, Alex, who's just slipped out. His job is dedicated to getting you guys, the successful applicants, media attention. So the other thing is, which seems a bit harsh, I think, at first, until you understand why, we don't give feedback on your application. That's an absolute policy from the Fulbright Commission. And that's because of that idea of the 1 year there might be, say, 10 lawyers come through and we choose 2. And then the other 8 thinking, oh my God, you know, I didn't get through and I've got a great record and I've put in a great application. But it'll just be that if they put that same application in the following year and only 2 lawyers are applying, they'll probably get through. So the pool changes hugely every year. It's phenomenal how much that the pool of applicants changes and the different swings you see coming through from sciences or the creative arts or whatever. So we do not give that feedback, so be aware of that. And we don't comment on applications either, so we can't read them beforehand. But do get colleagues, supervisors, those sorts of professional people around you just to have a look through your application. So Fulbright Values, here's a bit of Fulbright gold, I think, for your application. What are our values? What are we looking for? We're looking for passion. I've talked a lot about passion. A vision, to have a vision for yourself and how you fit within your field. Demonstrated excellence and achievement. And it may not just be academic achievement, it might be achievement in a whole host of activities. So we're looking for that kind of rounded person. We're looking for innovation, creative and inspired thinking, people that can think outside the box. People, wonderful thing, people who can bring partnerships, collaborations and linkages together. That's pure Fulbright gold. And the ambassadorial skills I spoke about. And there's a list of some of our sponsors. We've got quite a few now and growing all the time. So we're very, very grateful to these sponsors for giving some of the extra scholarships that we're now able to do, such as every state and territory except the ACT has a dedicated state scholarship, which is fantastic, and that's come from these sponsors. All right, so there's the contact details of the Commission, the phone number, there's my email should you need it. Fiona's fabulous. She's the scholarships officer and she does a very fine job at fielding a lot of the inquiries, so you can email Fiona. If it's a bit more complicated, send me an email and I'll have a look at your, if there's, an issue that you'd like to discuss, I'll have a look at that. So now I'm just going to give my voice a break and I'm going to ask the wonderful Professor Kauser to come forward with the equally wonderful Professor Leslie, who's very jet-lagged. He's flown in yesterday from Kansas State, lost all his luggage, had to go shopping last night for clothes, but I think he's looking pretty dapper, don't you think? So, John, would you mind coming up and I'll have a little rest?
Well, okay. Thanks, Ruth. Hey, I'm going to try to be brief because I think what may be most informative when we get into the Q&A is for you to hear from not the old guys, but the people who are in your shoes. So we have in Will, an Australian about to go to the United States, and then we have Laura here, who is an American who is doing this right now in the midst of a Fulbright postdoctoral fellowship. What I want to say, though, is just the general pitch. So when I was thinking back to when I was in your shoes, and I did a postdoc in actually the U.S. Senate. So I worked as a Senate staffer for a year between being a political science graduate student and a political science professor. And when I was trying to think about, why you should get off the track that you're on, right? Because it's doing something different, and it's doing something that's not quite clearly in a short-term instrumental basis going to lead to this publication or that collaboration. But thinking about why you should do a postdoc in general, and my thought was that what you guys are all really good at and what you've excelled at is by narrowing into a niche. From the discipline that you chose when you went to university, to your honors thesis, to your picking an advisor and writing a PhD, you did one thing extremely well and were able to figure out how to excel in that narrow world. For the rest of your career, where the next big leaps will come from is your ability to broaden yourself, your ability to find good collaborators, your ability to continue to teach yourself new skills is a huge thing once you leave graduate school, and your ability to speak to broader audiences. So if you want to publish not just in the niche journals in your field, but the discipline-wide journals and things like Science and Nature and those types of journals, you want to be as broad as possible. And that's what this experience allows you to do. The United States is a different world. It's a different academia. You're going to be working in either a different lab or doing a new kind of performance, experiencing a new kind of culture. All of those things will broaden you, and that's why I think it's hugely worthwhile to take this, to take some of your precious time and do something like this.
Okay, so originally I was supposed to ask Thad questions, but he decided he didn't want to do that. He was just going to sort of, let it all loose. You've seen faculty members that do that. And so rather than sort of, distract him and try to get him to focus, I mean, God, we wouldn't want that to happen because it can go for hours when we get that to happen. But what instead I want to do is I'm going to just tell you a little bit about my experience to give you some idea of what to expect. And if you asked Thad these questions this time next year, you'd find he was telling you different kinds of things. Because one of the things that happens when you do your Fulbright, and it doesn't matter whether you're a postgrad, a postdoc, or somebody that's my age or even older, you end up doing some things that you might not have done otherwise. You end up having some experiences that will be completely unique. And when you have them, you're different for them when you come back. So, for example, I was 50 years old, and I stayed at a college at the University of Sydney for my entire time as a postdoc here. Stop and think about that. That's a different adventure when you go into it. If you've never been a part of the Australian academic system, they tell you they want you to be interdisciplinary. Well, one of my good friends is still there. He's an Episcopalian bishop, who Church of England bishop, and I happily go back there every time I go to Sydney, and often will still stay there. Now that's a different kind of interaction. You're going to pick up pieces as a part of your Fulbright that you will have and that will be yours alone, and that will be different from anybody else that you're around working with. I mean, if you're thinking about doing a postdoc, you're probably going to grow up to be an academic. Okay, you're awful long way down that track once you start doing it. And the options for getting out are getting to be fewer. So every academic's got a bit of a different story. And you put the pieces together in different kinds of ways. And Fulbrights are one of the best ways to find new pieces, to find different pieces, to give yourself something that stands out, that makes you unusual. Because after you do a postdoc, what are you doing? You're looking for a job, right? And that's the worst thing. The best thing about being a postdoc is you're not a student anymore. So you don't have to worry about any kind of exams or tests or people putting pressure on you to, get that darn thesis finished. You don't have any of that pressure. But at the same time, you have this sort of feeling hanging over you that I need a job. Okay, and in the U.S., Dad, you can tell me. I don't know, when you guys advertise a position, how many applicants do you get relative to the number you can hire? Probably somewhere between, yeah.
Sometimes you don't even hire.
Yeah, and sometimes, we're usually in the 25 to 1 to 50 to 1 range. And so, somebody looks at your application, you need something there to make it stand out. In Australia, this is even worse, okay, because there's so relatively few positions. And one of the things that will make your application stand out is to have done a Fulbright, because immediately that says that you're someone who has been successful at the Australian level, because these things are very competitive in Australia. It tells them that you've spent a substantive amount of time outside of the country working with some of the best people in your field, whatever they might be, at probably one of the more competitive universities in the world. So Fulbrights provide you with some instant recognition, even if they know nothing about what you've done, because you've got a real interesting sort of stamp of approval that's been put on you. I don't know any better way to describe that. You want to add anything to that sort of thing? Because it's really true. It's one of the things that you can do that will really help you when you go looking for that new position, when you start looking for things that make you different and that give you the identity that it's going to take to survive as a faculty member when you do get that job. Because if you're good enough to get a Fulbright, you're certainly good enough to get a faculty job. And I don't know about you, but if we see somebody's had a Fulbright, we look at the application a little different than what we do if they haven't. So I think that's pretty much where I want to stop, unless you want to add something on top.
That's great. I think that's good.
Yeah,
we need some interaction.
Questions. Yep.
I was just going to see if Will and Laura Hayward here is our 2014 US Scholar. So maybe you'd like to come up and just say a couple of words?
Come on.
Your friends and colleagues, they don't bite. Okay.
I think it's nice to have a word from the youth of today, don't you?
Hi, everyone. I'm Laura, and I've been at UQ since August. So I'm towards the end of my 10 months in this country. And I definitely think that you get experiences not only in a lab setting or in your professional setting, but also in like a cultural setting. So it's one thing to visit Australia or visit the US, depending on which way, and go for 2 weeks and see the touristy kind of cliche things that everyone wants to go see. And it's another thing to be in a country for an extended period of time and actually live in the culture and kind of immerse yourself within what people in this country enjoy doing, whether it's sports or TV shows or just every Friday night type of things. So I found it to be interesting and very worthwhile and fun. I really liked it. I don't know, anything? Okay.
Thank you, Laura. That's lovely. And Will?
So I haven't started one yet. I'll be starting in November, but I at least got through the application. And I think maybe one of the things that might have helped with my application was I really sat back and looked at what I'd done and what I want to do and really used the Fulbright application, because I didn't think I was going to get it. So it was like, bugger it, I'll give it a crack. This is what I'd like to do. And if you'd let me do that, it'd be really great for these reasons. And it was a different application from the applications I put in for other postdocs and fellowships, in that it was, just taking what I'd done and sort of going, this is cool. This is what everyone that you'll look at in my field has done something around this. And what I want to do is sort of look at the other side of it so that, I can build these collaboration or collaborative networks between different universities and whatever, and come back with a bigger way of looking at my field, which may have helped it I don't know. Yeah, but I can't comment on the program because I haven't really done it yet. So.
We'll get to though when you get back.
Yeah.
So thank you for everyone for their contributions. I think it's nice to hear from people who are in the process, from people who have been there and can look back, and hopefully you guys will be looking forward to Fulbright and putting in an application. Look, I'm happy now to take any questions if anybody's got anything that they'd like to ask me before we wrap up. I do have a...
Yeah, well, okay,
there we go.
The problem is it goes out over the net.
I understand.
And if you don't use that, it doesn't matter how loud you are.
Do you want me to face this way so I'm on the camera?
We're all fine, Ani.
Hi there. My name's Jason Ferris. I'm from the University of Queensland. I'm an NHMRC postdoc. Only just started in January, and I haven't yet looked into the rules to whether or not I have the opportunity to also apply for a Fulbright concurrently. I don't know if you have that.
I can answer that one.
Yes.
No. No, that sounded very harsh, but I don't mean it to be harsh. But you can't hold two government scholarships concurrently. It's a bit like double dipping. So we like to spread the funding around. So if you were to get a Fulbright scholarship, then you could not take up the other and vice versa. So just to be very aware of that. But that's not to say that you shouldn't apply for both. And I would strongly encourage people for their professional careers to apply for many scholarships and all at the same time. And then, goodness, if you're offered 3 at a time, I mean, that's a terrible thing to have to make that dreadful decision of which scholarship you're going to take up. So, no, you can't hold both, but I encourage everybody here to be out there applying for scholarships, and as many as they can.
Thank you. My name is Saiful Kareem, and I'm a senior lecturer in QUT Law School. But I'm within first 2 years of my PhD. The problem is that I've seen the rule. It says that it has to be within 2 years. So I qualify in that aspect. But senior lecturer is probably within this university system, probably a mid-career thing. But am I eligible to apply?
Well, if you're a senior lecturer, kind of mid-career, the professional scholarships are particularly aimed at you, so you might want to look at those. There's 2 in the general category. They can go across all disciplines and all fields. And then if your particular area has any kind of industry link, it doesn't have to be, a commercial industry link. It might be just some way in which you might be, be able to tap into some kind of business or something like that. Then there are other professional scholarships that you can apply for as well. So I'd encourage you probably, and everybody, to first of all really familiarise yourself with the scholarships on offer, and then find out where you sit. So your particular case, I'd certainly be looking at so you said you're a senior lecturer?
Yeah, I'm a senior lecturer, but...
and also doing a PhD?
No. I've completed my PhD in 2013, so I can be qualified as a postdoctoral. That's why I'm saying that.
Then you're in a great position because you can get 2 bites of the cherry and you can apply in both categories, and we allow that.
So my post will not disqualify from applying from the PhD because I already have a full-time job.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. And most of our scholars, senior scholars and professionals, they're very busy people, but often they'll take a sabbatical or something like that.
That's what I can take.
Yeah, but absolutely. You're in a very fortunate position.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there any other questions?
Hi. Stuart Bell from here. I'm actually an associate lecturer is it 2 years or 3 years? And I think I read somewhere that there are some conditions that it may be longer. Can you talk about that, please?
For the home residency?
For the postdoc, since you completed.
Okay, good question. Very relevant, actually, to a lot of postdocs. Well, we like people that are fairly fresh, shall we say, out of their postdoc. But say if you're 5 years out of your postdoc and it's because maybe you've been caring for an elderly relative, or you've been home looking after children or something like that, we do extend it. So if there's extenuating circumstances, you can certainly apply still. You could get in touch with me, probably would be the best thing. If it's going on for 6 or 7 years, you might send me an email and put it in an email and say why it's been that long that you're now applying. But yeah, our preference is for 2 or 3 years out. But yes, in extenuating circumstances, as I said, we will certainly consider, and we wouldn't say no to that. We'd want to know what the circumstances were, that's all. And I think that's pretty fair. I sleep well at night knowing that we've got that ruling, because I think it gives people who've, say, had to look after small children or something like that, a chance to say, well, I mean, this happened to me because when I did my PhD, I had 4 children at home. And it wasn't easy. So, yeah, my postdoc, I was a postdoc, I felt, for a long time, probably 10 years. But under circumstances such as that, yeah, we'll certainly have some give and take. But that was a very good question. I'm glad you asked it.
Hi, I'm Yadvir. I'm just wrapping up my PhD from the University of Queensland. So I had a question really towards Will. Mm-hmm. Given there's a big lead-in time before a Fulbright kicks in, and you have a 2-year requirement after coming back from your Fulbright, how do you manage jobs before and after, like a postdoc before, or are you taking some time off from your postdoc at the moment?
Being very lucky. I was really lucky because I applied for the Fulbright at the same time as I applied for the internal fellowships at UQ, and I just got the UQ one, so UQ's letting me sort of delay that or put it on pause for the time of the Fulbright, which works out really well because I'll then finish the Fulbright, come back, and I'll have, I think, about 2.5 years of funding still at UQ, so that's very lucky because, I don't think it's particularly easy to get fellowships in Australia at the moment.
Yeah, that's true. Thanks, Will.
Yeah.
So I think too, because the Fulbright name is so well known, the universities really, I mean, what you've got to realise, if you get a Fulbright, who's going to be the biggest bragger of your Fulbright? Your university, because it's prestige for them, and they can say, look at us, we're great, we've got 2 Fulbrighters this year. So they tend to bend over backwards a little bit and work with you because, as I said, for them, this is a great thing that one of their scholars has got a Fulbright. Yeah.
Yeah, or if you're applying for a faculty position, so I had my faculty position, put it off, and we've done that for just about all of our new hires have gotten postdocs that we put it off for. Places are happy to not pay you for a year.
That's true. Yeah.
I found that as soon as because I was a little bit worried about it with UQ, but as soon as I mentioned it to them, it was, surprisingly little of a problem.
Yeah.
Which is very nice.
Yeah. Okay, look, we might finish up there. I just want to, first of all, thank all of those present for giving their time today to learn more about Fulbright, and also those other universities who've connected with us. I really thank you for all the effort you've gone to be with us today, to find out more about the Fulbright Scholarship, and I'm just so grateful that you've all done that, and thank you from the bottom of my heart for that. It's wonderful. Thank you.